Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Determination Subcommittee. Let me first apologise for actually being just slightly delayed at the start of the meeting. We had some problems IT-wise, but we believe we're all sorted now. Welcome also to those members of the public and press accessing the meeting via the live stream to YouTube. I'm Councillor Maureen Davis and I'm chairing today's meeting. Minutes will be produced in the usual way and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time as the minutes are produced. I'd like to remind members and officers that only audio from the microphones will be captured on live stream. Therefore, when speaking, please ensure your microphones are switched on and then switch them off when you have finished speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones are on silent or turned off. I will now begin with agenda item 1 and call upon member services to report any apologies for absence, please.
We've received no apologies for absence today, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2. Agenda item 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes on pages 3 and 4 of the agenda pack from the meeting of the 4th of February 2022 as being a correct record of that part of the meeting which took place in public. Do I have a proposer to confirm the minutes, please? Councillor Purser. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor French. Does any member have any comments to make on these minutes? Can I have a show of hands to approve the minutes, please? The public minutes of 4th of February 2002 are agreed. Agenda item 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. There are none. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, can you please raise your hand? No hands are raised. Thank you. In respect of agenda item 5, I'll now pass over to David Vincent, Health and Safety Emergency Planning Officer, to present the Corporate Health and Safety Annual Report. He will also be able to provide responses to any service-specific questions that the committee might have. Thank you, David.
Thank you. This is the Corporate Health and Safety Annual Report for 2021 to 2022. As you'll see there on part 1, it's an executive summary. But what I'll go through and cover is the key activities, the accident statistics, health and safety actions for 2021 to 22, and then also covering the ones for the next year. Some of the key activities that we went through was obviously the COVID pandemic. Obviously that began in March 2020 when we entered the first national lockdown. So obviously what we've done from the corporate health and safety side was obviously concentrating on the responses to our corporate buildings and protecting staff and visitor safety. In summary, obviously that covered undertaking COVID risk assessments, implementing social distancing requirements, looking at capacities in offices and meeting rooms, but also introducing enhanced cleaning regimes, obviously introducing the use of face coverings in the communal areas and ensuring obviously we had adequate ventilation, test and trace requirements, obviously identification of vulnerable staff, and obviously very importantly considering the mental health and well-being of our staff. So that's what the measures we had in place for the 2 years. But obviously then the government has now removed its workplace COVID guidance from March 2022, and that's now been replaced by public health guidance. So obviously, say during that 2 years, there was obviously a lot of measures going on, and certainly over this past year as well, in relation to ensure we had those measures in place. Codes of practice there at 2.2. Again, essentially the codes of practice support the our guidance to ensure we're compliant with legal and our council requirements. We have a programme ongoing of reviewing of those, and that's based on a 3-year review. As you'll see there were 13 codes of practice reviewed during that year. As you see, they're all listed there. So again, what that does is intention that we make sure our guidance is up to date and current and meets the legislation requirements, and making sure that they're fit for purpose and suitable for use. The second part there, moving on, is our training. Obviously, that's a key element of ensuring that we have trained, competent staff in place for carrying out those tasks safely. Again, training is identified through springboards, regular one-to-ones, team meetings, and through the council's health and safety panel. Again, obviously, as a result of the pandemic, physical health and safety training was significantly impacted during this past year. But again, certainly what we know with the government relaxation, we are now introducing more physical training during 2022 to 23. And already over the past month, we've been delivering fire safety and bomb threat training to our staff. The table there also shows you that the training that we've delivered during the past year, and you'll see there was conflict management training, and that was delivered via an e-learning package. And essentially that was delivered to our environmental health officers, our street scene officers, and our planning team as well. The managing challenging phone calls is a new one that we've introduced in the last year. And again, that's been delivered to the My Fenland team and the ARP team. And as you'll see there, that's to give them the skills and confidence in dealing with aggressive telephone calls, how to defuse those situations, etc. as well. And the last two you'll see there, again, is in relation to our first aid training. The first one there, first aid at work requalification, is for our corporate first aiders. And then the second one there is the emergency first aid at work, which we've now delivered to our to the My Fenland team, again, for use at the business centres. So they staff them as the receptionists. So again, we can provide first aid for anybody attending meetings, etc., or to any of the tenants in the communal areas. Training also is supported on the job training within all the service areas, but in particular, as it says there, at the higher risk sites such as the base and the Wisbeach port. And again, at the base, the key things we do there is toolbox talks. And again, is for obviously for staff in relation to undertaking banksman, reversing training assistance, and also driver CPC training, etc. as well. So very much the whole wheel of the training is delivered. Moving on there to health and safety emergencies. Obviously, one of the things we have to comply with is fire safety under the regulatory reform fire safety order. So again, what we obviously have emergency procedures in place, but we also train fire wardens, and specifically in the use of fire extinguishers, etc. as well. And again, with our fire safety, we go through 6 monthly fire drills in our buildings to undertake those at all our corporate buildings as well. First aid, again, as I've already mentioned, we provide 2 levels of first aid. Emergency first aid at work for the lower risk sites, for obviously in the business centres, and corporate first aiders at Fenland Hall and the base. And again, one of the things that we're looking to do there is introduce annual refresher training for them as well. You also see there's a table which indicates the number of trained staff we have at Fenland Hall, the base, and the business centres. Another one also to mention there is the importance of the mental health first aiders. At the date of this report, we had 31 staff trained. Again, obviously that's to assist staff who are experiencing mental health issues. And also, as you can appreciate, going through the pandemic, staff working from home, etc. Mental health wellbeing is a key part of our control measures going forward. 2.5 there is the meetings of the health and safety groups. Essentially, the key one we have there is the health and safety panel. That meets on a quarterly basis, and that's chaired by a corporate director. And obviously it comprises the head of human resources and myself as the health and safety manager. And we also have 10 workplace health and safety champions across the council. And I say, obviously, that meets on a quarterly basis, and obviously that approves the codes of practice, reports, and supports myself in obviously determining the health and safety priorities for the council. And the other group we have is the base health and safety group, and obviously that deals more directly with issues at the base, and again that meets on a quarterly basis. 2.6 there is the occupational health. We work very closely with the external health occupational health provider, and obviously her core functions, as you see there, is health, work health assessment screening, sickness absence, and obviously health promotion. And one of the things we work on there is there's a proactive health surveillance program, and obviously that's undertaken through a risk assessment process, identifying staff that need to go through that process. And obviously that covers undertaking hearing and vision screening and general lifestyle checks, skin surveillance, and hand-arm vibration. So during the past year, we had 69 staff who went through that process. And you'll see there, that's obviously environmental services, street scene, vehicle workshop, marine services, and other FDC commercial vehicle drivers. So that's on a rolling 2-year program. We've just completed that, and obviously that will start again this year going through. Moving on there to section 3 is the performance of our accident stats. As you see there, I include 5 years of the statistics going through. And as you'll see there for 2021-22, we had a total of 18 accidents. The largest ones there you'll see were slips, trips and falls with 6, and obviously lifting and manual handling injuries where we had 4 incidents of those. What I've included, you'll see at the bottom of the table, is the incident rate, and that gives us a more accurate picture of against 100 members of staff. So where the staff changes, at least by using that incident rate, that allows us accurately to see where we are. And as you can see there, we had 6.31 over the past year, and that's compared to 7.55 the previous year. So we are on a downward trend. We also had 6 near miss reports come in. And again, it's hard to get staff to obviously report things that don't happen. But again, through the training, we do reinforce that. It's, near misses are far more good indicator where accidents potentially could happen. So obviously that's the thing that we do promote going through from those. Moving on there to, you'll see in section 3.2, there's a breakdown of the services and the teams. Unsurprisingly, the communities, environment, leisure and planning had a total of 13 accidents during the year, and obviously then they're broken down into the other services there as well. And I've further broken those down, you'll see within the report, with the types and the kinds of the accidents in each of those services you will see there from those ones. In 3.3 is the RIDDOR injuries. That's obviously incidents that we have to report to the HSE, and there are very specified ones that we have to do. But I'm pleased to say during 21-22 that we had no accidents that we had to report to the HSE. Again, obviously, where they do occur, one of the things we do, they're subjected to an internal health and safety investigation. And then 3.4 is the total annual lost working days as a result of a work-related injury. And during 21-22, we had 11 lost working days that were in relation to work-related incidents. And again, that was for combined total of 2 members of staff. So quite a drop, as you can see there from the previous years, where we are now with 11 through those. And again, those 2 accidents were, one as a result of an hand injury through manual handling in the post room, and the other was in Fenton Hall, where a member of staff fell over and injured her wrist. Also pleased to say we had no accidents involving members of the public that were work related during the past year. But again, where they do occur, we will obviously follow up on those closely as well to obviously ensure we can stop those from occurring again in the future. Ill health data is recorded separately and not through the annual health and safety report, and that's collected by the HR team. So therefrom conclusions from the accident data, The accident statistics continue to remain low, certainly as shown in the table for the past 5 years. And also, obviously, it's encouraging that we had no reportable accidents to the HSE during the past year. Slips, trips and falls obviously remain the biggest cause contributing to our accident statistics. And that's really borne out in the national statistics as well, where you'll find that slips, trips and falls and manual handling account for 2/3 of all the accidents that occur generally. But again, obviously training and other interventions remain in place. And again, we also contribute is where there's a risk of obviously accidents occurring, but have great potential to cause injuries, such as obviously asbestos, Legionella, fire safety, contractor management. We do a lot of work in those areas to ensure that we can obviously those do not occur. So obviously there, what you'll see in section 4 is the health and safety performance up to March 22, and obviously for the coming year you will see there as well. So just as a summary, you'll see the ones for this year is obviously a review of the codes of practice, obviously ongoing health and safety training program, the health surveillance, but also developing more of our e-learning training, which we're in the process of doing. And 2 of the courses we're in the process of developing is health and safety management, and also working at heights training, and obviously continuing with the audits and inspections of all our services, and also continuing with the intranet-based health and safety information. You'll see that Appendix 1 is the action plan, and I'm pleased to say all those are green for the past year. And again, obviously, I say that really goes through slightly more detail. You'll see them in relation to the audits that are undertaken. As you'll see the example there, communications team, environmental health, housing and community support, marine services, property services, and transport workshop. And we've also introduced during that this past year the e-learning, which I've already mentioned. We've also introduced bomb threats, display screen equipment, risk assessments, and stress and mental health well-being. But as I say, you'll see that they're all, I'm pleased to say, green for the past year. Hopefully that's a run through and summary of the annual health and safety report for you.
Thank you, David. Can I have a proposer for the report, please? Jan French, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Brooks. Thank you. Thank you. The item is now open for debate. If anyone has any questions to raise with David. Councillor French.
Thank you, David. Yeah, a very good report. Can you tell me where is it reported? I don't see it in your list whether it's reported with you or HR. I do know that one of the refuge drivers broke his ankle when he fell down a pothole last year, and also I witnessed an accident on Wisbeach Road when somebody hit one of the rapid responses. Where is that reported?
We've had one in relation to that incident. We've had one in April of this year in regards to which is a widow report of an accident to a member of the Refuse and Claims.
No, the one I'm talking about was, I'm going to say it was either April or March last year, where the driver was hit, and that was in the middle of Dartford Road, and also I was called out to the street around the corner. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. He got out his refuse truck and fell down a pothole and broke his ankle. So would that be with you, Sam?
That would be, sorry, Chair. It would be reportable, so it would come under the accident. So it should be within those statistics.
Yes.
The first one that you referenced, Councillor French, was probably in previous year's annual report, but there wouldn't have been. No.
Yes, I'm aware of that one, and I'm pretty sure that was in the March of the previous year. I know we reported that to the HSE.
I know time passes. You're probably right.
Yeah. I think that's probably in March 21.
Yeah.
Which would have been the previous year's report, and that would have been into the HSE. I do remember that one being reported to the HSE, so I think that was March 21. So obviously this report covers from April 21 to March this year, in relation to that incident where he fell down the hole.
Councillor Wicks.
I have a number of questions reference the actual incidents. I noticed what I will call material handling. There have been 4 instances. What ongoing training do you provide to the staff for safe handling and safe lifting practices?
I mean, well, first and foremost, all the activities they undertake should be covered through the risk assessments with the individual services and teams. So they identify what activities they undertake and also the control measures that they require. And in relation to manual handling, obviously that's looking at the need to actually carry out manual handling. And obviously that's avoided where possible. So it should be again through the use of mechanical aids for using trolleys, etc., to negate the need to undertake that lifting and carrying. But again, obviously that's supported by manual handling training that we give to the teams. And again, we have DVDs, manual handling training courses we've done in the past as well, etc. as well. So really it's a combination of risk assessments, identifying where it's carried out. And obviously the risk assessment should identify a safe process to undertake that. And again, obviously looking at the individuals, the environments that's carried out, etc. as well. So it's looking at the task, the individual, the load and the environment that's been undertaken in.
Yes, but surely there should be an ongoing training plan for refreshing of the information on a periodic cycle.
That's correct. Yes, I mean the risk assessments are reviewed on an annual basis to make sure that they're current within individual teams, and also the individual managers are responsible for undertaking those reviews of the risk assessments. Also, the manual handling, the training when that's delivered. Again, the recommendation is that should be at least done on a 3-year basis to keep those skills up to date and current as well.
My next question is in relation to the slip and trip numbers. While I accept that leisure is in there, the other two, the other main, I've got to ask what workspace audits are done, which identifies potential slip and trip hazards within the working environment.
Yeah, I mean well, those accidents that are covered in then the slips and trips predominantly have occurred in the refuse and cleansing team, which are obviously out working on public spaces. So again, that's obviously, but they're also trained to make sure they've got suitable stout footwear. Again, they're obviously, it's about how they get out of the vehicles, not jumping down. So they're assessing the ground that they're going on to, but also the environmental conditions, whether it's wet grass, whether it's frosty, slippery, etc. as well. And then obviously in relation to our own buildings, our own car park areas, etc., they're obviously subject to regular inspections. And again, it's obviously one of the things we pick up through the Health and Safety Committee meetings to identify where we have issues, etc. as well. And we've also introduced a specific policy, obviously, on slips, trips and falls, a code of practice which sets out what also the managers are responsible for checking as well. So as we've already said, manual handling and slips and trips are the 2 biggest areas. If we can reduce those numbers, we obviously reduce our accidents further.
Regarding the overall accidents, what access do the staff actually have to the accident reporting book?
The accident reporting that we have an internet-based system on the internet for accident reporting and near miss reporting as well. But also where they don't have access to the electronic copies, we also use hard copies as well. And again, that's also used by the refuse and cleansing team. The drivers have copies of the accident forms in the vehicles as well. So again, we have the 2 systems that can be used as well from that side.
Just one final question. Are there any defibrillators both here and in the base, just in case they're needed? Yeah. We have one here outside the civic entrance here, and we're also looking at the other places, which is on our health and safety panel agenda for the next meeting, where we are making sure that with the recommendation that we've got them all at all our buildings. Thank you very much for that.
The other one was, we obviously have a lot of staff working from home. How many staff have we still? A question for you.
Yeah, I can answer that, Chair. It's approximately 50% of the staff are still working from home on a regular basis, not necessarily for 100% of their working hours.
And are they being supported health and safety wise and? Yeah.
Yeah,
And what
absolutely.
about, I mean, do we know the circumstances in which they're working from home? It's quite important when you're working from home and you're.
Yes. I mean, and again, one of the things that we introduced when staff moved to the working from home, it was obviously the home working risk assessments. Now, every member of staff who was working from home as part of that control measures is they had to complete and submit a home working risk assessment. And obviously that looks at the setup of where they're working. Do they have the, obviously a suitable work surface to work from, space wise, but also a suitable work type chair, and in some cases actually staff took those work chairs home to work from home, away from a fixed chair. So again, they're obviously supported through the managers, etc. as well.
Okay, Sam, you wanted to.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So all staff who are working from home on a regular basis are Teams enabled, and they have telephones so they can contact the managers or their teams, colleagues whenever they so choose. And for those members of staff who don't have facilities at home, certainly when the first lockdown started, it was a work from home if you can. But a number of staff have come back because their home working environment isn't conducive for them. So we very much take a bespoke approach for those individuals where it's not suitable. We get them back into the workplace.
Thank you. Councillor French, you wanted to ask?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, we've been out of lockdown for some time now. 50% seems exceptionally high for staff to be working from home. When are we likely to see a more substantial amount of members of staff returning to the workplace?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's dependent on a number of circumstances, really, Councillor French, and one of those is the accommodation review. As you're aware that the members are currently looking at the accommodation needs and the state of the building and the requirement to invest.
I knew there'd be a good excuse.
So whilst that's ongoing, we are still have a number of staff back at work, but not all of them.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sam. I've got sorry, is it pertinent to that point? No. Okay. Can I do my point first, and I'll come back to you? My next point was your appendix 1, and everything is marked green, yet the first item and the last item say ongoing. Would it be better if they were actually yellow? If they're ongoing, they're not completed, or am I misinterpreting?
Yeah, I mean, in relation to that, in regards to the risk assessments, I mean, yes, the risk assessments are ongoing to ensure we're compliant with the public health guidance. So I don't think there's a specific date that we could say that those risk assessments are, we still have in place, and we've now, what they're called, living with COVID. So they are ongoing risk assessments. So I don't think there's actually an end to those at the moment. So, so they are, as you'll see there, we've done all those risk assessments, but they keep being updated and unchanged. So it is an ongoing process, but that's really why we put those there.
Councillor Purser.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got 2 questions really. On the reporting of incidents, knocks and bruises and all things like that, Fred, I'm of the mindset that if I get a little knock and a bruise and it's only, I just basically brush myself down and get on with it. Is there a line where you draw to say, yes, we need to report that, or that's not worth reporting, what have you?
I mean, well, it is subjective to a degree. I mean, one of the first and foremost, obviously, we have is the near miss reporting, where potentially you are potentially at risk and something happens, but you don't get injured through it. So yes, we certainly encourage those to be reported as a near miss. And obviously, things I suppose you're trying to think about is like, say, for instance, like a paper cut. Those are the type of things as well. And then potentially we could say, well, put that through as almost as a near miss type incident as well.
I mean, if they're sitting in an office and a file fell on the head, that could hurt me if that file fell. But I mean, I wouldn't bother reporting anything like that. But it's almost a thing. Well, that's near miss. I better put that down as a thing. That to me is just not worth reporting.
We try obviously to encourage staff to report the near misses because obviously they occur a lot more regularly than actual accidents, and they're a good highlight of where we potentially have issues. So, I mean, yes, I mean we certainly don't discourage staff from reporting it. We rather they do report them, but even as I say, is that incident if it's not actually an injury or an accident, at least do it as a near miss. And obviously we still tight those going through.
Well, my thoughts were really that in some environments, sometimes you have a little bit of near miss here, or you can twist around in your chair and knock something over and what have you. And if you can report everything, you'd end up spending the whole day doing reports and reporting things rather than getting on with your work.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we don't have any reports coming in of that sort of ones other classes, not an accident. So it's where people have sprained themselves, or they've fallen down, they've cut themselves, or they've got bruises, etc. So we've never really had that issue of people reporting things that shouldn't be reported, which is pleasing.
Yeah. And the other question I've got, it was an interesting thing I actually saw in the report there. Managing of TOEFL, hard work phone calls. What training do you actually have for managing when people actually ring into the centre with, you've got some quite bad problems, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, the managing challenging phone calls is an e-learning course, and it's an external course that we use, and again, it takes them through the trainer, but also there are video case studies as well, where the member of the public are aggressive and threatening, and it goes through the key things of how to diffuse the situation. And again, it's also what to highlight is to let the members of staff how they can actually raise the situation as well.
Down a bit.
So, so it's about calming the process down, but also not getting head up about it, getting angry, not taking it personally, because obviously the person phoning in is the problem. Is the council, it's not the person on the telephone.
The reason I actually asked that is I personally had an incident a while ago where it was fairly obvious to me that people I was actually talking to had actually no training in that whatsoever. And I was thinking, I know they've been brought in from on a casual basis sometimes, or sitting in front of the screen. And I thought to myself, I wonder what training other people have actually had to say deal with somebody who's ringing after a bereavement or something like that. Really sorry for your loss. Oh, sorry, it's not on my screen, so therefore I can't say it. And that's where I was coming from, really.
No, well, I mean, we've trained all our staff within the ARP and the life
Empathy. That's what I was looking for, empathy.
So
Sam,
thank you
you wanted to come in on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that David mentioned we've got mental health first aiders and we've got mental health champions in the workplace, and all of those customer facing teams have at least 2 or 3 mental health first aiders in them. So it is possible, and we have seen customers that are calling in that are experiencing some really difficult times and they're in crisis, and we've been able to signpost them to those individuals to give them the support and actually get them onto the services they need. So it's not just a service for internal, it's for external as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's basically where I was coming from. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Sam. Members, are there any further questions on this report? Councillor Wicks?
I'll go back to your comments about the risk register. Surely a risk register is a living document and is never complete.
Yes, I mean, I totally agree. Risk assessments are ongoing process, so they are never complete. One of the things what I ask for, so where I can assess health and safety across the council, is that all teams are required to submit a risk register into me, so I can then obviously see when they've been last undertaken, when they do review, and also the levels of risk as well. So I get that across all of the services. So, and as you say, it's an ongoing process. It never gets to an end.
Councillor Wicks?
Thank you very much for that response.
There are no further speakers, therefore the Audit and Risk Management Determination Subcommittee are asked to note the council's performance within this report for 21-22. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation, otherwise I will take it that you agree. There are no raised hands, therefore the report is noted and approved. Thank you, David. In respect of agenda item 6, I now pass over to Phil Hughes, Acting Assistant Director, to present the Tree Risk Management and Planning and Tree Work Report. He will also be able to provide responses to any specific questions that the committee might have. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks very much, Chairman. So you've had the report. I don't plan to go through the code of practice, which is one of the appendices. It's 15 pages long, I think, all about trees. So if you do have questions about that, I can answer those, but I won't go through that today, if that's okay. So I'm here to talk to you about our proposed tree risk management strategy and how it's going to impact on planning as well, in terms of tree planning applications and the management of planning applications, including trees. So at the moment, we contract with an independent tree specialist whenever we need planning advice with regard to trees. And that's costing us around £16,000 a year. So that person's not an employee of the council, they're an independent contractor. So we call on them as and when required. We don't have in place a tree risk management strategy, but we have thousands of trees across Fenland Council's property. The way we've determined how many we think we've got is there's some clever software that sits in a plane with a radar, believe it or not, flies across the country, and it picks up trees that are 2.5 meters or higher. And we've overlaid that data on our mapping data because we know what land we own, and it's spat out a number. And there are thousands, as you can see from the report. In the past, we have inspected areas of high footfall. So we've called in a third-party arborist team to assess specific areas. So Wisbeach Park would be one example. Thousands of people travelling through that park on foot or by bike every week, and there are some significant trees there. And if one of those trees failed, or a branch of one of those trees failed, it could have catastrophic injuries for those people walking under those. Last time we assessed that park, I think it's about £3,500 plus that. So we did consider assessing all our trees with a third-party specialist, and the cost was huge and not something we could afford really. So we looked at the way we do planning at the moment and our requirement to assess our other trees just for safety. So this isn't a case of the tree looks nice or doesn't look nice or needs a trim. It's all about safety. And we think the best way of doing that is to employ a full-time arborist to do part of their work on planning and part of their work on the tree risk assessments. As you can see from the report, there are staffing costs for that. It'll be an additional £14,000 to £17,000 a year. And there are also upfront costs of managing those trees that they've assessed that then need some work, which is a good thing, because if they need some work when they're assessed, they may have needed some work for several years. But we think by year 3, we'll be into a position where the ongoing grounds maintenance tree budget will be able to cope with the ongoing tree assessments. And it'll be a revolving process, same sort of thing we do with memorial inspections. So at the moment, we've got 18 closed cemeteries and 5 open cemeteries, and each of the memorials in those are inspected on a rolling basis every 3 to 5 years. Sorry. So that's what's proposed. And in terms of the recommendations from the committee, it's to note the attached report and to consider the additional tree specialist to the establishment.
Thank you, Phil. Can I have a proposer for the report? Councillor French, and a seconder, Councillor Mockett. Thank you. The item is now open for debate. Councillor French.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I welcome this. Did you say that we don't actually have a policy?
At the moment, we don't have one in place, but attached to the report, there is a code of practice.
Okay. So I think I don't have any problem with. I think we need to actually have a proper policy on this. I do realise we do have thousands of trees. I mean, we had an incident in West End Park the other day, and we couldn't get hold of somebody. I had to call Mark Person to him to go and put a branch down. But in between time, a member of the public removed it, and it was a very large branch. Plus the fact we had 2 of our 20 new trees, the Queen's Canopy, totally snapped in half. I'm sure, I don't know if you're aware of that yet. But yes, I do welcome this. As you say, what it's going to cost is not a lot of money. It will save the council, I believe, potential of being sued or possibly corporate manslaughter, because we have a lot of very old trees, and if a tree, large branch falls down, they could kill somebody. And I have read various reports on corporate manslaughter, and it will be the chief exec, it will be on his head, nobody else's. So I certainly welcome this, and I think you need to get a policy in as soon as possible. And we do need all these trees, not just Wisbeach Park. We've got other parks across the whole of the district, including especially the cemeteries where people visit. So yes, I do welcome this.
Councillor Wicks.
As you well know, we've had long and detailed conversations on this matter over a number of years. I welcome it at last being put in place. And the 2 situations I keep on saying is Felbrick Hall and Yaxley, where youngsters died as a result of a tree failure. And it is so important with the number of trees that we do have in Fenland that they are subject to scrutiny on a regular basis. So I really do welcome this as a good start point, and I agree with Councillor French. Yes, we need an actual policy in place to reinforce this.
Phil, you wanted to answer?
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out, and I do note it in the report, that it will mitigate the risk, but it will never completely remove it. Once we've inspected all the trees, the risk will be reduced, but there's always that chance something might happen. And every time it's rather windy here, it makes me nervous. And I think this approach will certainly make things a lot more robust and reduce the risk to the council, risk to the community in our open spaces.
Yeah, I too welcome the report, and I mean, we can cite as it Mainey last year where that huge tree came down, and quite honestly, if there'd been someone in that car underneath it, they wouldn't be here now. So I think we do need a policy, and yes, I wholeheartedly support this. Thank you. Are there any more questions?
To get on with it as soon as possible.
Councillor Wicks.
As part of the ongoing, will there be a mechanism where, members of the council can highlight their areas of concern to you to actually, aid the survey that's ongoing?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So you can always report things to Parks and Open Spaces email address, and then that'll get passed on to the tree officer who'll do the inspections. I think the other thing I didn't mention when I was going through the report is it's a formal assessment with a piece of software that will record each and every individual assessment. So the background data is there, and the evidence that we've done the work is there.
So you also said that part of the time the arborist would be working with planning. So will that person be on call? Because a few times I've come across people gaily chopping down trees which have preservation orders on them. But by the time you actually manage to find someone here to approach and do the trees down, it's gone, it's too late.
I don't know about on call, but certainly if we've got a full-time officer working for Fenland Council and they're working on that day, they would be able to get across to assess what's going on. You got any comments on that, Nick?
There's a much greater opportunity to have somebody available than is currently the case. So we'll be much better positioned to be able to react.
Councillor French.
Thank you. Yeah, I do welcome this and understand what you just said, Nick. But my concern would be that we're going to employ this person to do the tree work, and we know it's going to take a long time. I wouldn't want that person to be sidetracked, and no disrespect to the planning department, that they're going to be inundated with planning work rather than actually employed to actually sort of do the corporate work.
Are there any further questions?
Can I suggest that we have a 6-monthly report on this, how it's going?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds ideal.
Councillor Mockett.
Just one question from Jan. If we're going to do this report, can it also detail the time spent on planning and the time spent surveying the trees? Because that will be the key of where they're spending the time to the value that you get.
I mean, they will have to work on planning because obviously the TPOs, etc. But I don't want that individual working 3/4 of their time for the planning.
Yeah, and I think the only way you'll know that is for the report to show where their time's spent.
Yeah, I think we can manage that. It won't be a case of them working 2 days strictly on planning and 3 days strictly on tree safety management. We will take a flexible and sensible approach to managing the team. And obviously, we work closely with planning colleagues on that, but respect that we need to get through a number of tree safety assessments. So yeah, it won't be all planning, it won't be all tree safety, it'll be a good mix.
Thank you, Phil. There are no further speakers, therefore the Audit and Risk Management Determination Subcommittee are asked to note the report and approve the proposed addition of a tree specialist to the council's establishment. Please, can you raise your hand if you disagree with the report? Otherwise, I will take it that you agree. There are no raised hands, therefore the report is noted and the recommendation is approved. Thank you, Phil. In relation to the remaining agenda items, members are asked to determine whether they contain information considered in accordance with paragraph 1 of Schedule 12A, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972 should be exempt and the press and public be excluded from the meeting, or whether the public interest in disclosing this information outweighs the public interest in maintaining the exemption. Can I ask any member who does not agree with the proposal to exclude the press and public for the discussion of the report to raise their hand now? Thank you, members are in agreement. Therefore, member services, please, can you stop the link to YouTube? Stop.